Well, yeah, so first of all, I'd like to apologise for not doing this last week when it was scheduled, but I was definitely unable to get out of bed, apart from for a very short, quick rush to the toilet. But anyway, hopefully now everything is working here. So, the Overlocker, what is it? What does it do? That's the thing that I was going to go through first of all, just a little bit, few PowerPoint slides so that you're aware of what it does. It's here on the desk, and there's a picture of it there. So basically, it works sort of similarly to a conventional sewing machine, which uses a stitch with a bobbin and a thread, but the Overlocker works with two needles. This one anyway does. Some have more, but this one has two needles and two loopers. So the looper is the equivalent of the little thing that goes round in the bottom of the sewing machine and feeds the thread to the bottom. So this is feeding two bottom threads and two threads to the needles. I've unthreaded this machine at the moment, and later on I'll thread it to show you how it all works. So an Overlocker generates or creates something like this. So this is a piece of material where the two sides have been joined with the overlocking stitch, and you can then, if you are doing something like this, you can create a little bag with it. I can't get my hand out, so I won't do that. But anyway, they're quite amazing machines when you look at the insides. Originally, it was only really available to large industrial sewing shops or whatever, but it's now available to the likes of ordinary people, and they're quite expensive. This one was about just under £800 second hand, so it's not a cheap choice, but for the Makerspace it seems like a good idea because it does allow you to do a few things you can't do on a conventional sewing machine, and you probably don't need an Overlocker on a regular basis, so it will allow us all to have access to one when we need it. So here's a little example of something we made with it, a little phone case. So you can do this sort of things, and there's a picture there of the material that I just showed earlier. So far I've only managed to make it do two different stitches. I've only had the time to learn how to do two different stitches on it, but it will do a whole different stack of stitches. So there's a big manual that sits on the desk next to it, and it's got all the instructions in here, including a page full of stitches and the instructions on how to set it up to do the different stitches. Over the next few months I'm going to have a go at some other ones, but some of them just use fewer what do you call it, threads. So yeah, it's easier if I read the English version because there's different languages in here. So far I've done two different stitches with 4 threads. There are quite a few choices with 3 threads and a couple with 2 threads. So the primary function of an Overlocker is to provide a clean finish. So it's good for finishing off the hem of a piece of material. The way the stitches work, they do have the ability to support some stretch material. So if you had some stretchy material and you needed that, it's very good in that respect. And the eyes of the loopers that do the bottom stitches, that bottom part of the stitches, they're larger than the eyes of a sewing needle, so you can use thicker material or thicker thread if you want to, at the moment we've got a set of threads here which are what I've done is I put on the machine different coloured threads so that at the end of the process we'll be able to see where each thread goes on the material that we sew. So the stitches on this picture are both using four threads. The bigger stitches, the difference between the bigger stitches and the smaller stitches are just moving this lever here. So when it's closer to you it does bigger stitches, move it back it does smaller stitches. And if you look at the way the teeth that push the material around there's some pushing it in two different directions. The other thing the overlocker can do is it can cut the material at the same time as it stitches. So it's a good idea when you're using a piece of material or cutting a piece of material to use something like this piece of tailor's chalk to mark where you want to work. Rather than try to cut it yourself with a pair of scissors, the overlocker does a much better job at cutting the material. So just mark it with a tailor's chalk and then follow the knife. And the knife you can have it up or down, but this is the knife, and it just flips round and flips into place. When you're threading though, you want it out of the way because it will get in the way of what you're trying to do. So I'll move it out of the way for the time being. So different stitches, as I said, the book's got different stitches. It shows you in there the stitch widths when you set it up. It advises on thread tension. Thread tension's controlled with these wheels at the top. So when it says like 3 to 5, you might. It's always a good idea when you're trying to sew something to try a little test piece of a similar material and then make sure you're getting the tension you want. Adjust these wheels to get the tension the way you want it. And at the moment it's mostly set around 5 or just slightly higher than 5. It seems to work for the particular thread and material that I was using. So it tells you in the book, this is an extract from the manual, you know, how to set the stitch length. There's controls on the sides for stitch length and for, I guess, I don't know what the other thing is, cut. It's this thing called differential. I'm not sure what that is. Sounds like something out of a car, doesn't it? But anyway, I suggest you just follow the various different things in the book, and so there's the page in the book, and there are four different pages. Make sure you do the English one because the other ones are a bit more of a challenge. The other thing you need to worry about is choosing the right thread, needle. Again, there's a page in the book that shows you what thread you can use for what sort of things, what needles are the best, and there are a bunch of needles came with the thing. Unfortunately, I broke 2 of them, but there are some others here for I bought a packet for stretch, and these 2 different sizes there for stretch material, and there's I think 3 different sizes in that one for standard material. So depending on the material, you might want to use different sizes of needles. They're numbered in the UK with things like 70, 80 and 90. And in fact in that packet there's some marked 100 as well. So
are they different from normal sewing machine needles?
They are exactly the same as normal sewing machine needles. They are normal sewing machine. You just that you've got 2 of them instead of at any one time. Well, you can have 2, not necessarily got 2, but I found the most interesting stitches so far have been with 2 needles and 4 threads. So It also tells you what sort of thread you can use either on the needles or the loopers. So for example, all-purpose threads, which is what we've got in the box by the where the machine normally sits. It's basically, you can use those for either side. Certain types of threads, polyester, woolly nylon, embroidery, darning, decorative threads, you only use in the loopers because the needles will be too narrow. The holes in the needles will be too narrow to take them. But anyway, so one thing though is that make sure when you're using this machine that the needles are in good condition. So have a quick look beforehand to make sure they're not bent, that point hasn't become hooked around. Again, there's some pictures in the manual showing you this, and what I'm going to do is actually take some of these pictures that I've made for this presentation and stick them in our notebook next to the machine so that they're easily found. So the big challenge is threading the machine. It's way more complicated than a sewing machine. There are 4 threads, all under tension, and they've all got their own paths. And you have to do it in order. So you can see here on the picture on the front of the machine, there's different coloured paths, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. But you know, 1 is the blue path. It starts second from the right, and you have to basically put the threads in that order. And there's a nice diagram in the book how to do it. It's a long little thing about going through the various different sections. So you have to bring the thread up from the spool, put it over the top of this arrangement which sort of guides the threads, and then down round the back of this machine down here. We'll go through all this in a minute, so you'll be able to see it actually done in practice. Similarly, there's a similar long convoluted path for the second thread. So the first and second threads are both looper threads. There's a little picture on the front that shows which part of the final sewing it goes through as well. So if you're looking at your piece of material and you go, oh, the tension seems a bit loose on one of the threads or a bit tight on one of the threads, you can look at this picture on the front, which is just here on the front of the machine, to try and tell you. When you're learning, the guy who sold me this thing in the shop suggested this idea of using different threads, and so that's what I'm going to do, different coloured threads, so you can see which is the right under tension or not under tension. We can learn how to do it properly. Then after threading the loopers, you have to thread the right hand needle first, and it's a slightly easier path to go through, but there's a little bit of a clever bit just above the needle, this part of the machine. It has to go around the right thing there. This machine has an automatic needle threader, but I've only ever got it to work once out of about 15 tries, so I'm not impressed by it. The man in the shop managed to make it work first time. Must have some very clever knack. I haven't been able to get it to work. So what I've done is I've bought one of these little gadgets here. It's extra long set of threaders, and these do a good job. So I'd recommend those. And then the other thing that I've forgotten to bring today, which is a good pair of glasses. So you do need to be able to see quite well to feed the thread through the needle. So finally, the left-hand needle, much a similar process, slightly easier than the right-hand needle. But at the end of the day, you want a little bit of thread, pull it out to the left-hand side so that it's free when on all the threads as you feed them through, and then you have to do a lot of that with the foot up. Originally I took the foot off to thread the needles. It made it slightly easier, but then I had a damn difficult job putting the foot back on and getting it to, and that's why I broke a needle, because I think the first time I did that, the foot didn't quite fit on properly and it fell off and broke the needle when I started sewing. So that's the end of the slideshow. Let me start showing you what the thing looks like. Now I've got the camera set up, so hopefully we should be able to see this thing with a bit of luck.
Famous Brian.
Yeah. So you can see here, there's the needles. I think I'll just release it from it. And you can see here the different things. We can sort of zoom in on it. But if you want, you might find it easier to come around this side of the machine when I'm trying to demonstrate the.
Cameraman.
Well, it's going to be awkward because I need to get into it. We'll see. Have a go. See if you can. It argues with you quite a lot because it's quite stiff, that thing. Yeah, you've gone sideways. That little mark there is where the top is. So you need to try and keep that at the top of the piece.
Anyway, right,
So I'm going to start with the blue thread, which is number 1. And one of the I think the main reason why you have to do this first is because it has to go over this thing, and once the red thread's in there, it's a bit awkward. But and notice that the threads are put onto these things, and I found that if you're using a big spool like that, then having these cup things up that way, so that it's almost like the bottom is further up, works. If you've got a small thread, then having them that way round is with the cup sort of opening pointing downwards seems to work best. So what happens is this goes first of all around this little blue tag at the back, and then it comes forward through the machine and down, and we're following the path, and each thing has got a little clip, as it were, to follow. Comes down here, around, and then we're ready. Once it's come through around this part here, it's ready to go into the looper. And to get the looper in the right place, you can rotate this wheel at the side of the machine. And so
does it matter whether you rotate it clockwise or anti-clockwise?
No, it doesn't seem to. Works both ways. So yeah. So let me just consult the thing to make sure I've got the right bit of the thing. Consult the manual. Again, there is a copy of the manual available as a PDF. So if you want to take it away and read it, I can give you a PDF copy to play with, as it were. So, oh yeah, and the other thing is there's this door at the front, which is open at the moment. It has to be closed for it to operate. So it's normally left in this closed position, and you just push it to one side, bring it down to open the door. And there's a little set of tools in here to make life easier. Unfortunately, some of the new tools we've just bought won't fit in there, but anyway, let's find the threading instructions. Oh yeah, some of the stitches will require this Overlocker converter kit, which is in a little plastic bag. I haven't tried this yet, so but it tells you about what you're supposed to do in the manual. So the first looper, let's get it to come out a bit further. Oh, it's got this. Yeah, that's it. Just trying to read how this thing goes round. So yeah, so I think from here, this first looper thread is relatively simple, and it just gets pushed through this hole in the looper. And I find that this pair of tweezers that are in the machines inside here is quite helpful for getting this to work. Hang on. Move this slightly out of the way so I can get it. Okay. Can you point this at the thing so I can see? Don't know if it'll focus that close, probably not, but yeah. And the other thing I've found is that it's important to have the thread nice and flat at the end, so a pair of scissors handy to get this thing in the right place. And just wondering if I've got the right looper here. No, I haven't. It's the other one.
So the looper eyes are one above the other? Or?
Yes. Well, they're two separate little things. I don't know if you can. Let me point at them. So this is the first looper. What's that called? The Overlocker. So yeah, so let's put this through the Overlocker again. So it is the one thing that I found is a bit awkward here is you could really do with smaller fingers and better glasses. And this is where I think I thought, oh yeah, I'll take the foot off, but I regretted it later. No. What's my scissors? Yeah. So I've managed to make the end go. Now I did find a video on YouTube for a slightly different model machine which took you through this process, and I watched it about 5 times before I felt like I knew what I was doing. Does that come through? No, lost it. Let me see if I've got a better pair of glasses. Oh no, I haven't got sunglasses. I think that'll work.
Those are the rose tinted ones.
Oh, yeah. I can see some things better and some things worse. Let's just put the foot down to get out of the way. Right, got it. So, and the other mistake I made this time, which is to have a bit too much thread here, and as a result it's looped around the wrong thing here. There we go. Yeah. So, I don't know if you can see that. It goes through this little loop here, then up through the looper. And then if I raise the foot again, what I've found is that once you've got a looper or a needle threaded, bring it over here to the left hand side of the machine, and then you can start on the next one. So that's the blue thread done. We'll do the red next, which is number 2. Back towards the front, and once again go down around this back loop, or not quite sure what you call them, but then down through the tension wheel, down the front of the machine, following the red spots, round here, and then around this same place there where the blue thread went, and then it comes down towards the bottom of this second looper. And for the second looper, you will have to move it out a bit, and there's this little button you can push to bring it down, and this makes it slightly easier to get to this sort of feeder mechanism. Again, it's easier using the tweezers. So it goes around this little feeder, and then up through. There's an extra bit there that feeds around, and then it goes through the hole in the loop in the lower looper. I'm just going to make this thread a bit shorter so I don't get it tangled up like I did the other one. So once again, push it through there, put the thread through and grab it from behind with the tweezers, and then pull it through, pull it over to the left. So that's the second looper set up. And then number 3 is the right hand needle. So that's the green path. So I'll put this on around this thing at the back, over the tension wheel, and this time the thread comes from the right towards the left, and it goes up here and around this thing on the front of the machine. So then there's a little loop at the front of the machine, little metal thing that you pull it through, pull it towards the right hand side, it goes through nicely, and then I'm just going to make sure I've got a nice flat end on it to feed into the needle. And I don't know if I can, it is quite difficult to feed it into the needle, but I've lost my tweezers now. They disappeared. Oh, dropped them on the floor. So you can sort of feed it through with the tweezers, but I've often found this gadget in the packet makes life a bit easier. Let's see how we get on.
The right hand of the pair of needles.
Yes, this is the right hand one, yeah. And then once you've thread it through the needle, it also has to go through this right hand loop at the top here. So I found it easier to put it. It usually falls off this loop or it can fall off the loop So it goes from always thread the needles from the front towards the back, and then once you've done that, you pull it through like the others from the side. Okay, so then finally our yellow loop, our yellow route, and the yellow route takes the last of these hooks. It goes down, and like all the others, round the back, down the front of the machine here, and then up over the yellow thing, and this time it has to come slightly further across around that little loop there, and then round this other bit of the I think it has to be top to bottom. Top. And then through the left hand needle. I've got way too much thread again, so I'll chop a bit off, make it easier. And one thing you'll notice if you do have to change a needle is that the two needles are not perfectly level with each other. So the right hand needle looks to be slightly longer than the left hand needle. They're actually not longer, it's just that they go up into the machine different distance. Thank you for that. Hopefully I've done it right now. So now we've got all the threads ready. We're ready to sew something. I'm a bit short of material at the moment, so I'm going to chop this piece of material and sew it again, which just chop the existing thing off. Can make a really crappy connection and get the machine to repair it for me, or to make it nice and new. So here's my piece of material. I'll just sew. As I said, you could sew two pieces together, but I'll just sew one edge so you can see it easily what's going on. So first thing you have to do is push the bottom looper back into position. So by raising this little button here, then you can close the door. There's an on-off switch on the right hand side of the machine. I've done all that with the on-off switch off. You might need to put it on. The machine won't actually operate while that big door's open, so it's a sort of safety feature anyway. But the advantage of that switch is it's got a light, which can be a bit make life a bit easier. I should have thought of that earlier, but luckily Alex was here to rescue me. The one other thing I want to do, actually, because I'm going to clean up this edge of this material, I'm going to put the knife back into place. So do that by pulling the thing towards the right hand side, twisting it around and then pushing it into position, and it sort of then moves back into its position there. So right, the foot has to be down to sew. If you try to sew with the foot up, you'll break a needle. I discovered that the hard way as well. So that was two needles I broke. But let's lift the foot up, put the material underneath to start this off, and you can see here that it's going to cut just a little bit inside the edge of the machine. And then the other thing you need to do is decide whether you want this little lever here forward or backwards. I'm going to push it backwards to start with, which, if I remember rightly, is the large stitches. So I'm going to start with all the tensions on about 5.5, because I've had that work quite successfully in the past. And then there's a foot switch to operate to make the machine go. And then it starts working. And once you get to the end, it's a good idea to run it on a little bit, because otherwise, if you don't run it on a little bit, cut too near there's a good chance you'll get the unthreading. So if you can do that, and then we've got we've got a bit left over, and there is a suggestion in one of the books I've read that you can feed this back underneath into the threads with a crochet hook. So if you look at that, you can see that the red loop is not very tight, so it could do with being a bit tighter. So what you can do then is adjust the tension to make it a bit tighter. So it's always a good idea to practice a bit first on a bit of material so you can get the tensions right. All the others, if you look at the detail, maybe the blue needs to be a bit tighter as well, actually. But the others look like the green and the yellow look like they're about right.
Can I have a look?
Yeah. So,
I can only see red and blue.
the others
Oh, I
are
see,
tight
they're-
enough, and they're quite
they're-
in the thing. So.
Okay.
So that's about it really for the moment. I'm not yet an expert in this, but I'm learning, and I'm hoping to do a little bit of modification of some clothing with it, so I can learn a bit more. And if you want to use it, come and see me, and I'll show you. Go through the whole thing. I think that's just basically to put your finger in, but. Maybe, I don't know. What I would say is please put things back in here if once you've finished, so that all the tools are available. There's a bit of blue tack holding a needle threader, which sometimes you'll find you need. So I managed to, having those really good pair of glasses.
Can I have a look at the pieces that you trimmed off?
Yeah, that was done when it was all set perfectly. Well, I believe perfectly.
Cool, cheers.
Thank you. I will stop recording.